Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back for your Virgo full moon lunar eclipse transit update. The eclipse station's exact on March 3rd at 6:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we've got quite a doozy. We don't have nearly as many direct conjunctions as we did for the Aquarius eclipse, but we'll have a lot of common themes coming back up. Now, I have my notes to the right over here, so if you see me looking over, I can't see the chart right now. I'm going to put that in after, but if you see me looking over, I'm looking at the chart and the notes that I took on the eclipse itself. So, just as a little forewarning there. But the first thing I want to mention is that quite literally, whether directly or indirectly, all roads, all planets, all aspects for this eclipse lead us back to our retrograded Cancer Jupiter. Now, that Jupiter turns around on March 10th. So 7 more days after the eclipse, we will still be dealing with that retrograded energy. But because there are so many planets in Pisces, and again, directly or indirectly, all of the planets that are either in Aries or Aquarius or anywhere else, all of those planets are being ruled by the planets in Pisces, and then all of the planets in Pisces are ruled by our Jupiter in Cancer. So even if we look at the moon will be in Virgo. The moon and the sun are going to be at 12 degrees, Virgo for the moon, and Pisces for the sun. With that Virgo moon, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury will be in Pisces at 20 degrees. And it'll also be retrograde, as I mentioned in the Aquarius eclipse video. It'll be 20 degrees Pisces, retrograde. And then at 20 degrees Pisces, it'll be ruled by our 15 degrees Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. Now, and then that Jupiter retrograde is ruled by our moon. So it's like this, the subtle yet heavy hitters of this energy are the Jupiter in Cancer, as I mentioned, the moon, the eclipse itself, and then that Mercury placement. They are making a sacred triangle from where they are of just this constantly cycling energy. And with 2 of these planets retrograde at the time of this eclipse, and with the eclipse itself as the moon is ever changing with the tides ever flowing, and the moon connects us to our most internal processing system, our emotions, our intuition, our dreams, our subconscious. With the moon, utilizing that energy, bobbing it back and forth between Mercury and Jupiter, Jupiter in Cancer, Mercury in Pisces. 2 very prominent water signs, both retrograded. Now, retrogrades don't only take us internally so we can get into the gunk and the gook and this unconscious waters that Pisces naturally swim in and Cancer can go into if they so choose to. You know, the crabs can go in the water or out of the water, whichever direction they feel like moving towards that day, that's where they will go. Ruled by the moon, again, ever changing. But retrogrades don't only take us internally, especially when they are in the water signs. That's emphasized. Retrogrades are also binding. Retrogrades are massive binding periods that will either allow us to tie up the endings of certain things because eclipses represent beginnings and endings. Either put a pretty bow and tie up the ending to a certain chapter, or bind us to something that we want to see grow and expand and prosper in the coming moon cycle. Now, since it's the full moon, we are in the middle of a moon cycle, which began with that Aquarius eclipse. So not only is it a moon cycle, it's an eclipse cycle of beginnings and endings and revelations, and taking that light of the sun that's reflected on the moon and allowing it not to reflect back your imagination or your distortion or your illusions, but to put a light on the areas of your life that have been ruled by the imagination or the distortion or the illusions of your unconscious, subconscious energy. Again, we'll have Mars at 0 degrees Pisces, a critical degree. We'll have the Sun in Pisces. We'll have the North Node in Pisces. We'll have Mercury in Pisces, and we'll have Venus in Pisces. 5 of our personal planets in the waters, in the depths of the unconscious as we are moving through this eclipse. So again, it's going to help you bring to light, shine that sunlight that's reflected off of the full moon. So even in the dark of night, there is still illumination on what needs to be seen. And it's what needs to be seen so it can be acknowledged, processed, integrated, and either healed and integrated further within, or released, transmuted, and returned back to sender, or back to the earth, or back to wherever you want to send it. But it has no more business being in here, and you know that. That's what this eclipse is illuminating right now. It's illuminating the endings that are ready to have that pretty bow put on it. And while we put the bow on those endings, it's also illuminating our destiny. Not only where we want to go, but where our intuition, where our soul has been guiding us to for a very long time, especially since the Virgo eclipse is back in August, because we had a new moon in Virgo, and then an eclipse in Leo, and then the eclipse in Virgo also. So we had 2 new moons in Virgo. in August and September of last year, the second of the two being an eclipse. So, a great thing you can do in the days leading up to the eclipse and even the days after, before Jupiter turns around, which again, it stations direct on March 10th. So, the days leading up to the eclipse, on the day of the eclipse, and then up until March 10th, this is a great time to put your eyes on what needs to be seen. And again, not only are retrogrades bringing us internally, not only are they binding us to tie up the endings and bind us to our paths that we want to move towards in the new beginning, but again, we have this cyclic energy of the moon communicating with the retrograded Mercury in Pisces, communicating with our Jupiter. Now, Mercury and Jupiter, we already talked about the moon, our subconscious, our emotions, our internal world, our internal landscapes, really. I guess the landscapes make up the larger world. Anyway, our internal world, our dreams, the things we feel very deeply for, the things that we feel very personally deeply for, and in a sense, our values, because that always connects to our intuition. When we look at Mercury and Jupiter, Mercury is the planet of intellect. It's the planet of communication. It's the way our brains operate. It's how we put together patterns and pieces in our minds. Now, when that's all retrograded, and I spoke on this with the Aquarius eclipse, where I spoke on this in my Pisces season video, where because all this energy is in Pisces, and there are so many, there's the two prominent retrogrades, and everything feels very internal and subconscious and uncertain. You may think you're speaking clearly, and in your mind, in your brain, everything is coming out clearly and concisely and directly. And that may be true, but the other person speaks a different language. So that no matter how clearly you're speaking, they're not going to understand you. This Mercury retrograde for this eclipse, it gives you the opportunity to recognize maybe I am being concise in my understanding, but in order to allow my understanding to translate outwardly, how can I then learn the other person's language so I'm not changing anything about my own processing system? I'm not changing the way I identify and move through the patterns. I'm not changing the way I express my dialect and understanding and wisdom of the patterns, but perhaps just the subtlest nudge that'll help take you from your unconscious radio station, turn the dial just one notch so that you're still saying all the same things, but in a way that translates to the other. When we take that concept of still honoring ourselves and our truth and our wisdom and finding a way to express it coherently to the other, if we take that idea and connect it to our Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, Jupiter is the planet of luck, of growth, of expansion, of fortune. But the thing with luck that a lot of people don't recognize is that luck is neutral. I almost said mutual. That is that. Mutual, luck is neutral. That's the word I wanted. Luck is neutral and mutual in that concept. Luck is not always good. Luck can be bad. When you think of the tarot card, the tarot card, the tarot card, the Wheel of Fortune, that can represent you riding high on the top of that wheel, but wheels are circular and they turn. So sometimes we're at the top, sometimes we're at the bottom. And the lesson of the Wheel of Fortune, as well as a retrograded Cancer Jupiter, is to not be braggy and lose your humbleness when you're at the top. To remember where you came from when you're at the bottom, because that wheel is always going to turn. So it's being grateful and being generous when you're at the top, not hoarding, not thinking it's because you got here because of your own hard work, which might be true, but ultimately, there's always a higher guidance and there's a cyclic nature to life. So when you're at the top, be humble, be grateful, be generous. When you're at the bottom, be humble, be grateful, be generous, because there's wisdom to learn here and there's wisdom to learn here. Now, with this communication with our retrograded Mercury and our retrograded Jupiter, which are kind of sort very loosely, because Mercury is going to be at 20 degrees, Jupiter is at 15 degrees. So very loosely, but depending on how wide your orbs go, they're technically in a harmonious communication in a trine. And then the moon is at 12 degrees. So again, depending on how wide your orbs go, I don't usually go above 5, but if we want to include up to 10, which some astrologers do, a 10-degree orb, we could also say that the Mercury and the moon are opposite, and Mercury and the sun are even closely in sextile. So, other than that opposition, which brings a necessary tension, because if everything is smooth sailing and flowing, we never learn anything. So, we have that trine, that harmonious aspect between the way we understand and process and communicate our awareness. Jupiter is also wisdom, along with the other things that I've mentioned: luck, growth, fortune, expansion. So, the way we communicate our awareness and wisdom and understandings to others. How that communication and how our ability to kind of take our unconscious field of awareness and translate it so other people become more aware of it with that Jupiter aspect. And we use it with the moon to allow illumination of what we want to see grow in our expression. Now, with Virgo, the moon is not alone in Virgo. The south node is in Virgo. And if we talk about conjunctions, that's another looser conjunction, 4 degrees, because the south node is at 8 degrees Virgo. The moon will, well, actually almost 9 degrees. It'll be at 8 degrees and 59 minutes, if I remember correctly. And then the moon will be at 12 degrees, 54 minutes. So just under 4-degree orb. Close enough, especially since there's a luminary involved, and then the south node. The south node and Virgo together, again, emphasize that bringing energy onto the earth. It emphasizes taking these lofty concepts that we have perhaps mastered in a past life, that we've perhaps already gone through. We've learned these lessons. We know what we're doing. It takes those usually lofty ideas that the south node encourages us not only to move away from, but to bring to earth so we can utilize them. That's emphasized by Virgo. Virgo is an earth sign, and not only that, Virgo is the mother. Virgo is the Virgin Mary. Virgo is the level-headed. Virgo is the harvest. So many aspects of Virgo is about literally taking the fruit of the earth and utilizing it for your growth, for your health, for your wealth, for your wellness. Now, with the South Node and Virgo together, with the South Node and the Moon together in Virgo, there's that emphasis that the illumination of all of the things we talked about before, of what needs to be tied up and put to an end, and also what we need to be seeing, and not even, you already see it. You already know it when it comes to your destiny. You've been feeling this, at least since that Virgo eclipse, the new moon eclipse in September, but probably for a long time. You've recognized this, you've understood it. If we think about when the North Node was in Virgo about 10 years ago, what kind of little nudges were you getting back then? What nudges? What ideas? And maybe you were really young. 10 years ago for me, I was 19. And that's when a lot of my spiritual journey truly began to take root, when the North Node was in Virgo. So it's the North Node more than the South Node is that lofty, destiny, purpose-driven understanding of I'm here today, but I see myself being all the way over there. Not tomorrow. I understand the path of the North Node takes time, but I see it, and I see it well. So while the North Node was in Virgo, we had these ideas of what we can see ourselves grounding to the earth. And now that we are on the opposite side of that spectrum, with the South Node in Virgo, it's taking the ideas that we had back then, the understandings, the awarenesses, oh, I actually like that idea and I would like to move towards it. It's almost like a checkpoint before the North Node goes back into Virgo during the next cycle, which again is about 10 to 12 years, but give or take. This eclipse, the Virgo full moon lunar eclipse with the South Node in Virgo, with all of that energy in Pisces, it gives a dreamlike quality to the things you only thought were a dream back when the North Node was in Virgo. And now that the South Node is here and the eclipse is illuminating and they are conjunct each other, again, loose, but still conjunct each other. What are those lofty dreams that you envision for yourself? The work you do, it can be as simple as a quick little journal page, a conversation with yourself out loud, talking to your altar, whatever you do. Any conscious and intentional effort you put forth on the days leading up to this eclipse, and then the days leading up till that Jupiter turns around, and even the rest of Pisces season, and even while the South Node is still in Virgo, which it will remain until July 27th of this year. So you have a couple months. You can bring a lot of intentional energy to take things that only ever seemed like a far off, distant dream and anchor them into reality. Put them on the ground. And with all of this Pisces energy, it gives it a very ethereal quality to it, where it's almost saying, oh, that was your dream when the North Node was in Virgo. Now the North Node is in Pisces. Dream bigger. Now Mars is at 0 degrees Pisces. Dream bigger because the action you put in today that leads you towards your passions, it's going to illuminate exactly what you need to do. You're going to be able to see the path you need to take, even if you don't know what it is until your foot is stepping on that exact stone that you're on then, there will be clarity. We don't usually get clarity with Pisces because again, it's the dream sphere. It's the unconscious. It's the hidden. It's the culmination. So it's also messy in that aspect where it has a little bit of every single sign before it. But while there's not visual clarity, there's resonance. I'll say that again. While there's not visual clarity, there's resonance. And I would argue that the resonance, the clarity you receive from the resonance, plays a much bigger role than visual clarity ever will. Because visual clarity is strictly physical. Resonance is on an energetic level. So again, you might not know where you're going until your foot is on that stepping stone. But the second you put your foot down, it'll be like, oh my God, now I need to step that way. Now I need to step that way. Your dreams and visions and this idea you have of destiny is no longer lofty. It's no longer distant. It's no longer far out. It's achievable. It's not only possible, it's probable. As long as you are willing to put your boots on the ground, get your hands a little dirty in the mud, because again, Virgo is about the earth. Virgo is about grounding. Get your hands a little dirty. Confirmation burp. Get your hands a little dirty. Be willing to put in the work. And if we go back to Saturn and Neptune and Aries, it's not only putting in the physical work, it's the mental work as well. Don't let the voices of doubt make you think that what you dream is not possible. So much of our intention starts and ends here when we allow those voices to get louder than our intuition, than our driving force, than our resonance. Fear only exists in the mind. And it's exactly in the mind, in fear, where those voices of doubt live as well. So quiet the voices of doubt. When you have this dream, this vision, this idea, know that you can make it a reality. And anything that tells you cannot, stop thought. Say, whoa, I don't know where I learned that. I don't know what pattern, I don't know what habit that was about. But we're going to reframe that story. And going back to our Aquarius eclipse, which it's still highlighted in this eclipse as well, we have Eris the asteroid even more closely conjunct with Chiron in Aries. Both of them will be at 23 degrees Aries, give or take, what's the orb? It's very, very small orb. A 41-minute orb. 0 degrees, 41 minutes apart. Very closely conjunct, less than a single degree. And again, Eris is the asteroid which represents discord and chaos and upheaval. So when it conjoins Chiron, it's telling us to take a hard look at the stories we've told ourselves. Sorry, that's my cat scratching back there. Take a hard look at the stories we've told ourselves about our wounds, about all of the pain and the trauma that we've gone through, and almost shake those stories. Shake yourself through those stories. How are you still allowing those stories to tell you what you can and cannot do? Whatever it is, one of the stories I love about Eris, I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, but there's a big Greek wedding with all the Greek gods. Everybody was invited except Eris. And she said, oh, you don't want me there? Fine. You don't want me there because I'm going to cause chaos? Fine. I won't be there, but I'll still cause chaos. She takes an apple and she writes on, oh, it was the wedding of, no, it wasn't the wedding of Hera. But Hera, Aphrodite, and one other goddess were, okay, anyway, she takes the apple. She writes, for the fairest, for the most beautiful goddess in the world, right? She takes that apple, creaks the door open, throws it into the reception area, and walks away. And thus creates discord because Aphrodite assumes the apple is hers. Hera assumes the apple is hers. The wife, I don't think anybody assumed the apple was the wife's, which is, it's kind of funny to me that all of these goddesses are at this wedding and they can't even give the wife a day. But thus is the Greek pantheon, right? But that's what Eris does. It shakes the foundation. It causes like this mental strife enough for you to question and fight for actually what you want to believe in. And so Eris can join Chiron. Yes, it might shake and stir your wounds up massively, to a point where you have to look at them and see them and reflect on them, which could hurt, which could reignite them temporarily. But it's in that reignition that you recognize how the stories of your wounding has held you back. and how with all of this Piscean energy, with the emphasis of Mercury and Jupiter and the moon all working in congruence with one another in that sacred triangle, how those energies can help you rewrite and rewire the programming of your mind so you can rewrite and retell yourself different stories that will help you grow and blossom and move towards your destiny. Now, while all of that Piscean energy is loud in the sense that it's like compact, right? Because there's so much of it. But again, Piscean energy is not loud in itself, but because it's all condensed right there, it's very prominent. It's you cannot ignore that unconscious current that we're moving in. Virgo's lit up, Cancer's lit up because that Cancer Jupiter rules everything that's happening in this chart right now. One of the subtle players, subtle but prominent players, subtle but prominent energies we're working with is Aquarius. Now, the only major planet that we have in Aquarius is Pluto. But we also have Vesta, which conjoined Mars during our Aquarius eclipse. And again, we are still in the Aquarius moon cycle right now. So Aquarius, again, subtle yet potent, powerful player in how all of this energy is moving. So again, we have Pluto at 4 degrees Aquarius. We'll have Vesta at 26 degrees Aquarius, I believe. Let me find her very quickly. Yeah, 26 degrees Aquarius. And then we'll have asteroid Hecate at that critical 0 degrees Aquarius. And Pluto is a deeply spiritual planet in the fact that it forces us, to guide ourselves through death, rebirth, and transformation. It forces us to look at ourselves, forces us to see what needs to be destroyed so that we can burn away like a forest fire, burn away everything we do not need so we can regrow ourselves more wise, more strong, more fruitful. Hecate, the asteroid, she's the mother of witches. She's a fierce guardian and protector of women, of priestesses, I should say. And again, the goddess of magic. Vesta, as I mentioned with the Aquarius eclipse. Vesta is our sacred flame. She's a goddess that never took real human physical form, but she exists in every single fire you burn. She's that sacred devotional aspect that ignites us and drives us towards our devotional practices, which helps us understand ourselves, understand the spiritual matrix that we exist in, and understand what it means to be devoted to something bigger than us. And through that devotion, how we find ourselves in the larger grand scheme of our destiny, of our purpose, and of how we fit into the story of Gaia, of humanity, of life. 3 very prominent, very spiritual asteroids and planet, all in Aquarius, during an Aquarius moon cycle. And with Aquarius, we talk about the Aquarian winds, the primordial energy, the primordial spirits that have been here way longer than any living piece of matter has been here. Before life really birthed itself, before life as we know it birthed itself on this planet. There were the winds, there were the elements. That's the Aquarian energy. Now, when we think of the Aquarian winds, think of the breath, think of word magic, think of how you can use your winds to speak into existence what you want to manifest, right? And going back to our Pisces Mercury. Mercury is retrograde. Retrogrades bind us. When it's in Pisces, it's the realm of the unconscious. Oh, and the star card just came to my mind because in the star card in the tarot, that's a space of liminality. You are neither here nor there. You're not in the physical realm. You're not in the spiritual realm. You are in this dreamlike state where you can pull literally any lofty idea, inspiration, anything you want from that flow state, from the collective unconscious. And then through the moon, learn how to bring it into our physical reality. That's the energy I get from Vesta, Pluto, and Hecate at 0 degrees again. That's the energy I get from these 3 magical aspects sharing space in Aquarius with that Mercury retrograde. Word magic is potent. Word magic is potent. If something needs to burn away and put a pretty bow on it, use your words. Use the wind of your breath to speak life into what you want to see grow, to speak life into the destiny you know is meant for you. Despite whatever fears of the mind try to tell you it's not realistic or whatever it's telling you, you know it's meant for you. So during this eclipse, use the wind of your breath to speak life into that destiny. and to burn away what no longer is relevant, what you no longer need, what you're ready to release officially. This is the last full moon and the last eclipse until the spring equinox, the new year, the new beginning, the first degree of Aries season, the breath of life. It's the birthing canal, when we move from the impregnated unconscious energy of the womb, of the void, and birth it into existence. Bring it here onto earth. What do you want to speak life into? The energies are backing you with that. Whatever it is, the energies are backing you prominently. Now, I took a lot more notes on the asteroids Persephone and Psyche and Eros, which we talked about during the Aquarius eclipse, but this is already very long, and I'm trying to be mindful of time. But what I do want to mention before we go, the elemental energy here, the majority is mutable water, and then the Cancer, Jupiter, which is our cardinal water, which is ruling everything, right? The majority of the energy we have here is mutable water, with our Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, North Node, and Jupiter. And then we also have significant fire energy with Saturn and Neptune and Lilith and Chiron. Lilith being in Sagittarius, Chiron, Saturn, and Neptune all in Aries. Oh, and I didn't even mention that, which seems important. Lilith will be directly square the North Node. And Lilith represents our carnal desires, our deep, dark, divine feminine, the feminine that's been cast out, the feminine that, despite just wanting to be left alone, I don't know if you know Lilith's story, like the true story of Lilith, not just what the church tells, but she was cast out because she wouldn't follow the rules. She did not want to lay under Adam when they had sex. She was like, hey, can we, and she didn't only want to be on top. She said, hey, can we switch it up so that sometimes I'm on top, sometimes I'm on the bottom? Like, can we just make it equal? Adam didn't like that. So he tried to go to the Almighty God and say, hey, this bitch isn't following my directions. She's not following my rules. So they cast Lilith out. But Lilith was pregnant. They tried to kill her, and she just ran. They had a girl. Hi, Nelly girl. Speaking of Lilith, this is my little dark feminine. They tried to kill her, but she kept running, and she kept running, and she got so far away from the garden. She routed. She didn't want anything to do with them. She wasn't going to expose them. She wasn't going to try to bring them down. She wanted to mind her business and have her baby and live her life on her own. And they were hunting her. Hunting her. All because she asked a man if they could be equal in their partnership. That's the story of Lilith. It's how trying to demand what you are owed gets you cast out, but still owning that aspect of yourself anyway, and not allowing yourself to be subverted or subdued or murdered because of what you know is right. Now, when Lilith squares our North Node, yes, the squares bring tensions, but with all of that energy condensed in Pisces, and then trined with our Jupiter, which is ruling everything, we don't have a lot of energy in that upper sphere. We have our moon in Virgo. And so technically, Lilith is not only directly squaring the North Node, she's also more loosely squaring the eclipse and the sun and the moon. So it's this idea of there might be tensions, and this goes back to what I was saying about the voices of the mind. There might be tensions in the ways that you can see yourself pursuing this lofty destiny, and you know what's right, and you know what you're meant for, and you know that not everybody's going to agree with your path, and that it might get you cast out or set aside in certain communities or with certain people. And so there's that tension is going to be the doubts of the mind saying either it's too lofty or it's unrealistic, or the fear of being ostracized for this destiny you see yourself moving towards. That's the tension, and that's the choice. Do you subdue fears of the mind and say, well, I don't care if I'm cast out, because if I'm cast out of this community, that just gives me space to find the right people that will resonate with my word, with what I'm going after. Being cast out of a community that doesn't want me to be the real me is a blessing. And it creates space so you can find what's true to you. That's the biggest thing I'll say with Lilith square the North Node. But the last thing I want to mention, I said to go back to when the North Node was in Virgo. I said to go back to the Virgo eclipse during September of last year. And one last thing I will mention is to go back before Jupiter turns around on February or on March 10th. Go back to when Jupiter first stationed retrograde, which was 11/11/2025, Scorpio season. We had the Sun, Venus, and the dark moon Lilith, again, all in Scorpio. We had Mercury and Mars conjunct in Sagittarius, conjunct on the day that Jupiter turned around. We had the North Node at 15 degrees Pisces, which Jupiter is sitting pretty at 15 degrees Cancer the whole time, perfectly trine. Perfectly trine. And that seems most important here. That where the North Node was is perfectly trine where Jupiter is now. There's this idea of once Jupiter turned around, and when it turned around, it was at 25 degrees, I believe, 25 degrees Cancer. Yeah, Jupiter was at 25 degrees Cancer, exactly trine Saturn, which was at 25 degrees Cancer, and then Neptune was at 29 degrees Pisces. Now, Jupiter trine Saturn, when it turned around, gave us the ability, because Saturn is all about long-term goals, long-term dreams, discipline you can do today so you can reach it there tomorrow, or in 10 years, more like with Saturn. They were directly trine each other when Jupiter turned around. So it was that moment of this is my Saturnian idea. This is where I want to go before Saturn moves into Aries, and while Saturn transits Aries for the next 2.5 years. Before Jupiter or before Saturn even moved into Aries, there was that moment of pause where we got to have that harmonious energy between our luck, our growth, our expansion, our wisdom, and our discipline, and our grounded discipline, and what we can do to allow that wisdom to grow and expand and prosper. Sorry if you hear that. That's my other cat playing with the ball. Now, with Jupiter currently stationing exactly trine where the North Node was when it first turned around, there were seeds planted back on that day. Maybe it did an 11/11 portal thing. Maybe it was just like an unconscious passing thought. There were seeds planted that day that you unconsciously told yourself you wanted to fertilize and foster during Jupiter retrograde. And we're about to turn that around. So go back to November 11th. Go back to the Virgo eclipse. Go back in your journal, in your photos, in your videos. Go back however you keep track of your thoughts, your ideas, your dreams, your wishes, your beliefs, your understandings. Go back to wherever you keep your thoughts. Take note of what seeds were planted then. Because when Jupiter turns around on March 10th, those seeds have already been fostered. They've already sprouted underground. And March 10th, we're going to start to see it poke up. And then all of a sudden, when the spring equinox comes around, not only is that plant poking out of the soil, it's starting to blossom. It's starting to grow. And it'll grow quickly. Because while retrogrades bring us internally, when retrogrades turn around, especially when Jupiter's involved, that growth is quick. That growth is undeniable. That growth is expansive. And again, very quickly. So go back to the seeds that were planted. Take stock, take note, take heed. And again, allow the illumination of the sun reflecting the full moon not to illuminate the previous distortion, not to illuminate the unconscious stories we've been telling ourselves about our traumas and the reasons why we can't go after a certain thing. Don't allow it to illuminate the distortion. Allow it to illuminate the Aquarian winds, the magic, the devotion, the intellectual understanding of the self. Allow it to illuminate what needs to be put a pretty bow on and sent away because we're done with that, and what we need to bind ourselves to moving forward. Again, eclipses are beginnings and endings. We're in the Aquarius moon cycle, eclipse cycle. With Saturn and Neptune, by the time the eclipse happens, Neptune's already going to be at 1 degree, Saturn's going to be at 2 degrees. So they're not going to be directly conjunct and they will be past that critical degree point. But that just means that they have a more grounded awareness of what it means to now exist in Aries, where they will stay for the next 2.5/14 years for Saturn and Neptune, respectively. That seems like the most relevant thing. Utilize the breath and the magic of your word. Utilize it. Utilize it to ground that lofty destiny purpose that you see yourself achieving, You can see so clearly, or even if, again, even if it's not clear sight, it's clear resonance and it's a clear knowing. That's all I got. I hope you guys are excited. It doesn't feel like a subtle energy. It doesn't feel subtle. Maybe on the day of, it's not going to be in your face because again, we have a lot of Piscean energy, which is unconscious and unseen, but you'll feel it. It's like if you're submerged underwater in the depths of the ocean and there's a big storm coming. Even at the deepest level, you can feel the tide shifting. You can feel the tide shifting. And then the further up you go to the surface to go investigate, those tides, you can feel the shifts even more until you get to the top and it's churning. It's churning. So where before, funny enough, in Scorpio season, we were talking about the unconscious energy and how we might have been up here, but underneath there was a churning down there. I talked about this a lot on my TikTok, where the churning was down here underneath and unseen and unknown, but unfelt but known, I should say. Now it's reversed. Now we're in the depths and it's a little bit calm down here. We can feel the subtle shifts where it's churning at the top. It's churning at the top. And when Jupiter turns around to station direct, when Mercury turns around just before the eclipse or just before the equinox, and then the equinox, we're taking off. So that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for listening this far if you did, and happy eclipse season. God, I love you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.